everybody, I'm Dr. Lisa Erickson, and today we're going to discuss wrist stability. I've had a few climbers contact me and ask me what the deal is with having wrists that feel like they're hypermobile or as if they're pulling apart while climbing, and this is something very important that we do need to discuss. The muscles of the forearm and of the fingers themselves are what give stability and structure to the wrist and the forearm. When we lose the stability is when we get injuries to the actual joints themselves or to the ligaments and stretch them out, which is what gives us wrist issues. So as a climber, it's very important to watch how you weight your wrist to ensure that it is as stable and as supported as possible each time you use it. So in example, if you were to hold on to a hold and then all of a sudden you start to spin on that, you very well can injure these structures. So it's not as if we have any control over that in an outdoor setting, but just observing that if it feels like your wrist might just come apart while you're climbing up stuff like this, it could be a very good idea to strengthen that as well as to stabilize it with tapes and with bars and TheraBands. With that said, I've been asked to cover a few taping technique ideas for your wrist. I would like to draw attention to the type of taping for crack climbing, where we go in and we will actually tape around every single finger and then also across the back and stabilize it that way. That is an excellent technique for taping to help to hold the wrist together, as well as the stretchy type material. What I like about the stretchy type material is it just compresses that joint. So if you have already injured your wrist in that you have already done a move where you have what we call barn dooring or spinning around that wrist, and you have injured the wrist and it's more lax or more flexible than it should be, that is where tape can go in and very much so help to stabilize it. So with the kinesio tape, this type tape is really good for people that have reoccurring wrist pain, but stability or actually maintaining the bones together in the wrist is not a major priority. So for someone that has pain but they haven't truly had a trauma that could injure their wrist, this is a perfect taping method. For someone that has completely disrupted the ligaments that hold the bones together of their wrist or has stretched those out, this type of a taping method is not advised. I'd rather have you use a climber's tape, also known as athletic tape. So let's go into taping of both of those. For wrists that need a little bit of rotational stability, that's a very simple tape job. We'll take some tape that is roughly half the distance between your fingers and your elbow, so about that much tape, and then we can go in, so let's say 10 to 12 inches for the average person. We'll go in and then I just have you make a fist. You start the tape, and I will actually start it so that where your wrist crease is, we have the tape projecting beyond that wrist crease, so it gets the entirety of your wrist joints and covered with the tape. And then making the fist, that creates, if these muscles are going to take up more space, as you squeeze, you might notice these muscles bulge out of the wrist. So taping while your wrist is as large as it's going to get is going to have the most effect. So squeezing that and then providing a little bit of some stretch, just coming around a couple times and ending your tape. That is just a basic stability wrist job. We see this in power weightlifting, we see this in CrossFit, we see this in our gymnasts, and so that is a perfect tape job just for stability. For those who need a little bit more support with wrists that have been distracted or pulled apart this way, that's where we start adding tape through the fingers and back down again, and that tape job is in a different video. So taping for the wrist is very important, but the more stability work you do, the less your wrist pain is going to bother you. So pain is a sign that something's going on. So either we have a stability issue, we have an inflammation issue, or we have an overuse type tendinitis. So delve into these structures and see where the pain is coming from. If it feels like it's coming from deep within the joint and you feel it when you pull those joints apart, then that is coming from a true joint within the wrist itself. If the pain is on the underside of the wrist, and you can localize it to one of these tendons that comes through the center of your wrist, that is a tendonitis type issue, and this tape job would be perfect for it. Or if it's a pain that we can't quite localize, which is worse when you compress it and it feels like it's just kind of the whole wrist, that's more of a swelling type issue, and that would benefit from the compressive kinesio tape. However, you can also use the climber's tape to compress it. The difference between the climber's tape and this we've covered in a previous video, but climber's tape you cannot tape as tightly as this, and climber's tape will stretch out roughly 15% as you climb on it, but it's very important not to over tape the wrist tension-wise with the climber's tape, because our nerve, artery, and vein run right through the palm and up this up the front of your wrist. So if we have too much compression on that, it can actually cause damage to the vessels of your hand and most definitely limit the amount of climbing you can do. So with taping these things, we say begin with light compression and slowly build up with the compression to see where your happy spot is for how much compression and how much of a region of tape that you need. So that is it for taping for stability for the wrist. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any more questions, we do have our book, Climbing Injuries Solved, that we cover all of this in, and you're more than welcome to shoot me an email. I am Dr. Lisa at lifesportchiro, CHIRO.com, and my website is climbinginjuriessolved.com. Have a great day.